talk about, somebody mentioned individualizing instruction. So play-based learning really lends itself to this idea of being able to individualize instruction. Because the more we can move things out of whole group, and we can free up opportunity for you to engage in small groups where you can differentiate instruction, or you can have centers where you can have an adult there to help guide instruction, the more able we are to be able to meet the individual needs of our students. So one thing you want to keep in mind is that not only does it provide you an avenue for potentially helping kids learn and differentiate their learning, but that kids are going to come to you with very different understandings of what play is and different ways in which they think they should be involved in play. So if we're thinking about individualizing instruction, we also need to think about how we might individualize our play instruction. So there are different levels in which children can socially involve in play. So we talked a lot about cooperation as a key component of play, but play is not always this active, engaging thing. Sometimes my role in a play scenario is just watching somebody else play. So I was the youngest girl of two brothers who loved playing Nintendo. And I cannot tell you how much of my childhood was spent watching my brothers play Nintendo. I didn't touch a controller. I was not allowed to touch a controller. But I engaged in that playful interchange with them by just watching. So seeing a kid just watching from the sidelines, I would consider that that's an element of play. They don't actively have to be playing that game of kickball, but they could be watching. And so you might want to think about, if they want to be involved, stepping in, but also understanding that that's a level of play that some kids are comfortable with. If I've never been around other kids in this kind of scenario, online looker kind of play might be happening a lot. And that might be something that you want to work on, but don't discount it as being an essential component to that kind of playful activity. There's also solitary play, so maybe I'm reading a book by myself, I'm flipping through the pages. I could be working on a puzzle by myself. I could be climbing a tree by myself. But some way that I am engaging in this activity by myself. And that is another fine level of play. So play doesn't always have to be this cooperative interchange. I can engage in parallel play. So this is where we're all doing the same thing, but we're not doing it together, right? So I'm in the blocks section of the classroom. I've got my set of blocks, I'm building them. You've got your set of blocks, and you're building them. We're doing the same thing. We're doing it in a playful, open-ended way, but we're not, you don't touch my blocks and I don't touch yours, right? Parallel instruction happens a lot in our classrooms. We usually think of it as parallel passive instruction, like we're all working on the same worksheet, but we're not working together. But you can think of the same idea with play. There's associative play. So this is now where Lisa and I are playing with our blocks, and now she's letting me share her blocks, right? I'm still doing my own product. We're not working on the same structure together, but we're sharing, and we're kind of now starting to get a little bit more social. And then the highest form of play is really this cooperative or organizational play. So this is, we are now working together to build a structure together, or we're playing a game together where we're having to take turns or roles. It's a cooperative instruction for me to be able to play that fidget game where I'm reading the book and you're taking your turn and standing up and spinning around, because if I stand up when it's your word, that's not cooperative. We're not working together for that goal of being able to do this story together. And some of my work also has shown that children who engage in more cooperative and associative types of interactions, they tend to learn more than kids that don't. So I said that this is okay, onlooker's okay, but you want to push your kids down towards thinking about ways in which you can make things not only hands-on, but working together towards a goal. And that not only has benefits for social development, but that has benefits for academic development as well. So kids in my work that engage in more associative and cooperative play end up making more gains across the school year in both math and in literacy.
I don't know if you want to keep this from the very end, but it kind of has to do with social development. So you have kids acting out scenarios that involve weapons, guns. What is your feeling about that? Because I've read different viewpoints, so I'm just kind of curious what you think and what you've experienced.
Yeah. So we have currently, right now, we are doing a lot of talk around this because children, we take the, what's the word I want? The notion that children are exploring power. right? Because you have families that say, my children don't even watch TV and they're talking about Ninja Turtles or whatever. It's because it's about social involvement, and there's so much that's going on. As Kim was just saying, using different words, children need to learn how to enter play, sustain play, and exit play, right? And if they don't know how to do that, they sort of hone into the nearest way to do that, whether it's I'm knocking over your blocks, or I'm shooting you with my gun, or I'm using a sword, or what have you. And so we are looking at power across the ages as a action research for the teachers. And let me tell you, it's hard. Why? Because families have this sense of, right? Everything that's going on in the media, everything that's going on out there. And so if I could give you any advice on that, it would be talk to the teachers and talk to your school, because it will look so different. We have the philosophy that children have to act out those things to really understand them. But if you try to do that in an environment that doesn't have those same thoughts, it's not going to serve you well, and it's not going to serve your children well, if that makes sense.
But if it is acceptable, though, are these conversations that we should have about why they're doing it, or?
Here's the thing, from my perspective.
Yeah,
Jump
right
in,
ahead.
you're the expert here, I think. But here's the thing, give them enough knowledge that they can figure out enough. It's kind of like that thing where there's a story about where do babies come from, and the parents get all anxious, and at the end of the story it's like, well, I just thought they came from Buffalo or something. It was about the location. Because I think we overthink things as adults sometimes, and we want to give them too much information. So this is where your questions become really a luxury for you. Well, tell me about that. Tell me what you think about that. And then you can reflect with your colleagues, maybe, or self-reflect, and come up with the next step. Because here's the other thing, you don't have to have all the answers either. And it's okay for them to know that you don't have all the answers.
Right. I just never know how to approach it when they're on the playground and they're running around shooting each other, you know.
Our thing is everybody on the same page?
Yeah.
Do you want to be playing this game together? Okay. As soon as you don't, it's over.
Yeah.
The children have to be able to direct it, but also they have to have sort of the safe word, if you will. Right? So if they can articulate that and play it out in action, I'm cool. Yeah.
It's hard, but I think you make a really good point that, like, when we get down to this associative and cooperative play, there's an element of, like, mutual understanding that we're doing this thing together. And if ever at the point I'm not doing this with you, then that's a different conversation. They don't like being when you shoot at them. We need to find another way to play. Yeah. Okay. So some different things to consider, which I think is going to be an important one, is what your kids bring to the table. Things that might account for this variation and how much your kids are engaging in play-based learning that you want to think about is their maturity level, right? So a young 5-year-old will have a different understanding of probably what they want to do and what play is like and the type of play they can do than somebody who's an older 5. So we want to take that kind of variation within an age into account as well. We want to think about their practice and skill difference. So what kind of things do they do at home? Are they playing with swords? Like, you know, just like anything else, like what is their schema, or how do they view play? And how does that influence whether or not they can engage adequately in these experiences you're setting up for them? Family life experiences go hand in hand with that. Cultural differences, so there are differences. Christine mentioned that, you know, what do parents want? That is hugely important, and some parents are going to want a more academic focus. And so if you're doing all these play-based things, there might be some pushback from families based either upon culture or prior experiences that they don't want that. They want it to be the more regimented, direct instruction. And so you need to think about, how do I have those conversations? How do I talk to parents about what this is affording their kids and how I'm using play as an avenue to teach those academic skills? But if the parent doesn't view that as important, and it's more of an academic, like direct instruction approach, then the kids' play and understanding of how to engage in this kind of play might be very different. The quality of the environment you provide them is going to be hugely important on whether or not they engage in it. So we as teachers, this goes back to that point of it's important to prep with the environment and how important it is that we provide space and time and materials to do this exploration. And then, again, going hand in hand with that, it's not just the environment, it's what you do. So ultimately, these are things that you can't really control, right? The kid is the age that they are, and they've had the prior experiences they've had coming into your classroom. But you can do these things. You can be sensitive to this, but you can control your environment as much as you can. And you can think about how you're teaching and those teaching strategies that you're using.
I'm just wondering, so I had a student 2 years ago who came in, her parent was a teacher, she's the oldest in her family, academically probably 2 years advanced to everybody else in the room. So the amount that she engaged in play with her peers was extremely minimal. She sought adults at all times because she was like, what are you doing? Like, why?
Yeah.
You know, like she was just so ahead. So how do you recommend accounting for that difference? Like when there's such a huge gap?
So this is something that's underused in classrooms a lot, is using peers as teachers. And so that's a great case that if you know the various levels of your kid's skill, like she's really strong in math, have her go to the center with somebody else that's working on the math manipulatives and propose the problem to her to say, could you help? Could you help them come up with a new pattern? Honestly, in her vocabulary, if you could get her engaged in some kind of like teacher, you're a good person role, could be a great way to teach new vocabulary to kids, because she's probably using vocabulary words that the kids aren't normal, that might be new and novel to those kids. So I would encourage that if you've got somebody who's on together in, really doing mixed ability groups is a great way in terms of both play and academic skills to get kids to be involved in a kind of a cooperative way. That's what I would encourage. It's easier said than done, but that would be kind of the thing I would lean towards.
I actually found that when kids are higher in academics, they're lacking a social piece, where they have to really work on that. So, I mean, that's something you could say to the parents too, that they need to really focus on their social part.
And I think that just goes back to reinforcing the whole idea that we are about comprehensive development, and that we all have strengths. We all have skills that we can develop. Sometimes I can't even say the word propose, right? Like it's like stuck on the tip of my tongue. So we all have skills that we need to work on no matter what. And thinking about development comprehensively, I think, and the importance of that comprehensive development is something that we do need to reinforce.
I was wondering if you have any slides of successful structures of the classrooms and the different types of centers that are set up that you can share with us.
So I don't. I would go to, I would think NACE would probably be the best resource for that information, the National Association for the Education of Young Children. They've got a lot of information on setting,
And that's on the website. I think it's on our website.
Yeah, it's on their website too. They've got a lot of resources about like organizing and structuring classrooms. I could give you some really key points on that. So this will be on there. There's some links to resources like NACE, which I mentioned. That's it, the Center for Educational Innovation Tests and stuff. One website I like a lot is just QED. It's a PBS station or NPR station out of California. They've got all kinds of like up-to-date research and like 3-minute like video, like audio podcasts. They're a great place to use. And then my contact information. Please feel free to reach out. I really do appreciate you coming. And I know this is just the tip of the iceberg, and to really make this happen and happen well, it's going to take a lot more work, and know that we want to be there to support it. I need to make a thank you to the New Hampshire Department of Education and the UNH's Child Study and Development Center, which go to their website. They'll connect you to Lisa and the resources that they might be able to provide. And they also provided all these cute pictures of kids. So I have to say thank you to them for that as well.